It is Friday, November 27th. Let's talk PlayStation. Alright everyone, obviously we did just have a brand new console generation kickoff, and that's really exciting, but despite that happening, it is worth pointing out that as we get closer to the holidays and then certainly the new year, this is normally a time frame where we shouldn't expect major announcements. Not to say that they won't happen, but this is normally a time frame where it's all about pushing out those last few updates, games to retail to meet that holiday rush, and then normally within the industry people will be taking off time from work, and just from a corporate level, major announcements aren't really scheduled to happen. So at least for right now, we do still have a fair amount to discuss because again, it is a brand new platform launch. However, this is probably where I wouldn't expect major stuff until when we get into January. But either way, let's start off with our PlayStation Plus reminder. You don't have much time left to download November's games. In fact, it changes over right on December 1st, and December will be Worms Rumble, Just Cause 4, and Rocket Arena. Now, this isn't a bad month, not a great month, somewhere in the middle, although I am glad to see 3 games moving forward, with one of them being a PS5 native title. That's Worms Rumble. Arguably not a title that you really need to have natively supported on PS5, but either way, it's still a PS5 game no less, so 3 games total. And this time around, Worms Rumble will be claimable as a PS4 game as well, so it's not really something where you can claim it but have to wait to get a PS5 to play the PS5 version. You can claim it on PS4, that's good. Now, getting into our first news story, actually, the PlayStation Plus Collection, this is something that we've brought up a few times now, but the Plus Collection is a PS5 only benefit. However, you can log into a PS5, claim the games, go back to a PS4 and play them. Turns out that if this is abused, it could be a bannable offense, either permanently or via time period. So what we're recently seeing is that some users online are turning this into a service where they're charging $8, $9, $10, whatever the amount may be. They'll log into your account, claim the games for you. That way you can get the games if you don't know a PS5 owner, and then they make a little bit of money. But obviously Sony does not like this whatsoever. Not so much that a transaction's taking place, because they probably can't easily see that. These things can easily be evaded by doing it off-site on PayPal, Venmo, wherever you want to do it. But what they can see is one PS5 console accessing 50 to 100 PSN IDs every single day and only doing one thing, which is going to the store and, you know, claiming all these games, and then that's it. And then Sony can see those IDs being logged back into a PS4 console that's miles away from where that PS5 console was. I mean, they can... This is where they're actually banning people. So the PS5 owners are seeing permanent bans, and then the PS4 owners are getting temporary bans. Now, if you've done this with a friend or something, I would imagine you're fine. This is really a matter of one console owner doing this an excessive amount of times to where Sony can see it. They've probably got some sort of system in place where it alerts them automatically or something, and they probably knew that this would get abused to some effect, and maybe that's why they've already got some kind of a system in place to catch this. But if you are a PS5 owner and you want to do this for a friend or whatever, go ahead and do it. But don't turn this into a, 10 people, 20 people sort of thing. Even if it's for free, I would probably avoid that. Now, moving on to our next news story, we have another PS5 system software update that was recently made available this past week. It's 20.02.02.26.00. This one, much like last week, says it improves the performance of the system, just in a vague manner, doesn't directly call out fixing one issue or rectifying another. It's welcomed. I mean, the conversation we had last week holds true here. There's still a lot of PlayStation 5 issues that need to be worked out, and so I would like them to call out what this is actually doing. I think that would put a lot more people at ease with certain things that in the back of their head they're thinking, maybe I shouldn't use rest mode, maybe I shouldn't use an external drive, things like that. I mean, if they are solving these things behind the scenes, I think it would be better to call it out specifically in these notes. But either way, I almost think we'll probably see an update every single week. Let's see if this is a streak that we can keep up. For our next news story, Sony Interactive Entertainment President and CEO Jim Ryan was speaking with the Russian outlet TASS, where he gave a pretty straightforward statement about PS5 availability. He says, and I quote, "Everything is sold. Absolutely everything is sold. I've spent much of the last year trying to be sure that we can generate enough demand for the product, and now in terms of my executive bandwidth, I'm spending a lot more time on trying to increase supply to meet that demand." Look, you don't even need Jim Ryan to tell you this. We can all plainly see what's happening. Yeah, every single console is getting sold. We've said this how many times over now, even well before PS5 came out. It's a brand new generation. It's going to be very tough to get a hold of one of these, especially during the holiday season. Microsoft also dealing with the same supply issues. You're going to be hard-pressed to see a PS5 sitting on a store shelf for longer than a few minutes, maybe even a few seconds, right? Every single machine that does get made is going to get sold. What is more important is looking at that first quarter of 2021 and what supply looks like after the holidays, which even then, it looks like it might be supply constrained. But what's notable here is that we haven't really gotten official sales figures from Sony just yet, which we did hear out of Japan that allegedly PS5 did around 118,000 units. And just for perspective's sake, that's quite low compared to PS4, which was closer to 400,000. PS3 was lower, probably a little under 100,000, like 90,000, somewhere around there. That's not really indicative of anything, though. That just tells us how many consoles were sent to Japan. We won't really know much of anything, but it is noteworthy because Sony told us PS4 numbers pretty much the next day, and then the next 2 weeks, and then they gave a figure at the end of the year, which at the end of 2013, PS4 sold around 4.2 million consoles. Now, the only thing that they did issue very recently is a single tweet where they say, "We want to thank gamers everywhere for making the PS5 launch our biggest console launch ever. Demand for PS5 is unprecedented, so we wanted to confirm that more PS5 inventory will be coming to retailers before the end of the year. Please stay in touch with your local retailers." So, despite not having any official sales numbers just yet, this tweet has inadvertently confirmed our suspicions that in all likelihood PS5 now has the most successful launch in console history. And the only reason why we can say that is because PS4 held that title in 2013. So if PS5 beat that, then we know PS5, the most successful console launch ever. Mind you, Microsoft has not put out any official numbers either. They have said it's the best launch in Xbox history, but they've also confirmed they started manufacturing a little bit after Sony. And remember, in this time frame, it's all about how many consoles you make, because again, they're all going to get sold. But at least in the scope of PlayStation, Sony confirmed back in 2013, 2 weeks after PS4 came out, they sold 2.1 million units. So if we compare that to PS5, which same time frame, about 2 weeks from the earliest availability, that means PS5 probably sold a little bit over 2.1 million consoles, which is obviously good. I mean, I predicted in our annual predictions video that we do on this channel that they would sell about 5 million consoles. Basically, I was just saying that I think they'll probably make more of these versus PS4 back then. But hey, it's great to see that PS5 will probably have the most successful launch ever. Microsoft also having their best launch in Xbox history. I mean, it's really encouraging to see. There's just more and more people playing games, accepting games, being engaged consumers that buy day one or buy lots of software. I love how much this industry is growing, and more so that consoles are still as relevant as they could possibly be. We've heard so many times over the years and over the generations that at some point consoles will die off or become irrelevant, but that doesn't really seem to be the case anytime soon, as we still see numbers and records being broken on a software or hardware basis. But of course, amongst all this launch success, there is an ugly side to it, and that's the bots, the scalpers. One of the groups that actually focuses on this spoke with Business Insider this past week, proudly claiming that they've secured over 3,500 PS5 consoles since the machine actually launched, and they do this through a variety of ways, which they were pretty transparent about, you know, how this group actually operates. They've got a number of members that, they sell a subscription service to actually find out when some of these products go on sale, what's hot, what's going to be, you know, in demand. They will sell bots for individual personal use, or if you want to go ahead and buy these products to resell them, but they'll focus on either the next gen consoles, which currently right now is what's really hot, but they also do things like shoes. I guess during the pandemic at one point hot tubs were in demand, so that's something that they were going after as well. But this group will, through a variety of means, secure all these products and then flip them to make a profit. Which I think most can agree here, nobody really likes scalpers unless you're a wealthy individual and you don't mind paying over market price for something if it's out of stock. But most do not like scalpers, and that's what's annoying about humans in general, is that we're opportunistic in nature. If there's any sort of exploit in society, there's going to be people that will take advantage of that for personal or financial gain, and that's what we have here. So it's not a matter of guilting these people into saying it's wrong, don't do that, this and that. There's always going to be somebody that will do it. It's a matter of putting measures in place so that they can't do it, or they're penalized for doing it. In some countries, it's illegal to even purchase products like these and then try to resell them. So, you know, it's got to be stopped at the source, making sure that it can't even happen to begin with. But at least in the context of right now with PS5 and Series S and X, this is a product that is not limited. It will come back. It will be in wide availability next year, hopefully. And that's where you can go into a store and have no problem buying one of these. And so I know there's FOMO, you know, the fear of missing out, not being able to get one right now, or it's frustrating when you're in the checkout process and it goes out of stock. But you have to remember a few things. You will be able to buy it eventually. And two, it is frustrating when you can't purchase it, but there's like, I think under 10,000 eBay listings right now, and granted, a lot of them have multiple quantities, but between that, Facebook Marketplace, and wherever these things can get sold, the vast majority of these consoles are getting sold to genuine customers So I know it sucks to say, oh, you know, those bots, they took my console, but you're also fighting other customers as well. Genuine people that want to buy these things for personal use. So I know that may not be what you want to hear right now, but just try to keep that in mind, and hopefully this will make it a little bit easier for you. Sony and Microsoft have been forward about how this process has dissatisfied them so far, and it's like we said last week, I don't really know why one of the retailers aren't doing a whole lot more. But also, just Sony and Microsoft, they sell direct to the consumer from their websites. I don't know why they don't just do this Apple style where they just continuously take orders and then just push out the delivery timeline further and further based on the allocation that you may have ordered, right? At the very least, that means you've secured a console, you'll get it at some point, and this will also motivate people to not want to go out and buy a console from a scalper, thus they have to sit on these machines and try to return them. It may be a short-term answer, but I don't know why they can't do that or what's stopping them from doing that. Now, I did also want to point out this UK group that we've been talking about here. They did post on their Facebook page. They said, and I quote here, "Lots of our community have been furloughed, made redundant, or at some form of disadvantage due to the pandemic. These people have managed to cover their bills, put food on the table, and supply Christmas presents to their children. It may be unfortunate that a child won't wake up to a PS5 this Christmas, but another child may have woken up to nothing. We have no regrets." So I wanted to include that because, well, first off, I can totally sympathize with anybody that's lost their job, whether it's from the pandemic or not. We've all had low points in our financial life. I'm sure we can all look back and we know that we've been through some hardships. I totally get that. And I've explained that there is an open market here. If you want to stop it, it has to be done at the source, not the people. But with this, I mean, can we maybe cut the excuses for 1 second and just get real? To do this, you need a lot of money. You need a lot of capital. If you even buy one of these things, you've probably got some expendable cash that you're willing to risk, because this is not a no-risk investment opportunity to buy, say, a PlayStation 5 and resell it for what, maybe twice the price? You're not selling them for 10 times the price, maybe twice the price. And that's a maybe because there's a lot of consoles out there. You might have to accept the best offer on eBay. There's PayPal fees, eBay fees. You run the risk of maybe getting robbed in person if you do this through Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. I mean, let's get real. There are way better places to put your money and invest, because that's what it takes to do this in the first place. So if you are experiencing financial hardship, I highly doubt you're getting back on your feet through selling consoles at a premium, which is this is your one and only opportunity for the consoles. And I mean, hot tubs? Really? Shoes? We all know shoes can get really expensive. This is a side hustle for people. Some people do live off of it. But if we're going to be transparent, let's actually be transparent. If you're doing this for a side hustle, then you're still eating, regardless of selling online. And then if this is your full-time job, then you have plenty of capital to pay your bills and put food on the table. For our next news story, it looks like BestBuy.com may have made a listing error for The Last of Us Part 2. When you're searching for games on their site, or more specifically PS4 games, you'll see those titles tagged with either Enhanced for Next Gen or includes Next Gen Upgrade. And The Last of Us Part 2, of course, has not had any announcement for a free Next Gen Upgrade or any PS5 native version for that matter. Now, this could just be a simple error on Best Buy's part and not indicative of us seeing an actual native port for the game. But it is somewhat noteworthy that this is clearly a trend that many publishers and developers have been doing for a lot of their current-gen games. And of course, these are late lifecycle PS4 titles. Ghost of Tsushima already had a soft amount of support on PS5, which is just a patch for the PS4 game, which would unlock the frame rate, and that's how you can get it at pretty much a full 4K 60. It looks beautiful on PS5, but this is also something where not only is Sucker Punch continuously working on Ghost of Tsushima Legends, but we also know that Naughty Dog is working on The Last of Us Factions, so we could probably see them at some point push out a native port for both of these games, and that's where you can see better visual enhancements. And at this point, I think it would have to be a meaningful upgrade for them to try and either do the slight $10 upgrade fee or $20 upgrade fee like they kind of did with Miles Morales through the Spider-Man Remastered version, which at some point that'll get unbundled, but you're not starting from ground zero, so you could easily move these games over and either do a small upgrade fee or release it at retail again with PS5 box art, which can certainly generate more interest for that specific game. I think whether it's Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, or whatever, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of this stuff where it comes out again at retail, possibly includes all the content that they've released. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of publishers actually explore this aspect of re-releasing on PS5 and Series S and X, and we'll see how we'll see their pricing schemes Now, while we're somewhat on the topic of The Last of Us, we can also discuss this, which is that HBO series that was announced earlier this year. Looks like it's good to go. Fully greenlit by HBO. They ordered a full season. At least that's what it seems like, and so they'll go into full production very soon. And remember, this is a full adaptation of The Last of Us into an HBO series through PlayStation Productions, also Sony Pictures Television. It's going to be written by Craig Mazin, Neil Druckmann, executive produced by Evan Wells, Asad Kizilbash, and Carter Swan. Normally, we've been fairly pessimistic about all these adaptations, and normally that's, movies, right? When we talk about the Uncharted movie or anything else that we've seen previously, never usually pans out all that well. But the fact that The Witcher actually did really good, it seems like it did really good. I'm not too much into The Witcher. I've seen a little bit of it, and I've played a little bit of the franchise, but it's not really my thing, so I can't speak for everybody. But it seems like that actually turned out fairly well. So, I mean, it's encouraging to have one example where this actually turns out okay. And The Last of Us is a universe that could easily, I think, work in television. I mean, we've seen it demonstrated how many times over when it comes to post-apocalyptic zombie-like universes, so it's very possible that it could work. I'm not really much of a TV watcher myself. I have to really like something to spend a lot of time with it, so I'm not sure if this is something I would watch, even if it turns out okay, but this is something where we'll watch the development of this new HBO series as it comes to fruition. Moving on, it looks like a PlayStation VR Mega Pack will be available this month in Europe, New Zealand, and Australia. This Mega Pack will include the camera, headset, Astrobot Rescue Mission, Moss, Everybody's Golf, Blood and Truth, and PlayStation VR Worlds all in one package. You'll also get that very important camera adapter so you can use this headset on PS5, which we know most PSVR bundles in Japan will now include this adapter, and I'd imagine that most headsets getting shipped over to North America will already include this adapter if they don't already. This is something where it's a really good value, although it's important to note if you're thinking about buying this for, say, PS5 or the potential of using it on PS5, it doesn't include a DualShock 4, which you technically need, and it also doesn't have any PlayStation Move controllers, which a lot of this software is better played with Move controllers. This is a question I've been getting asked a lot recently, which is, should I get PlayStation VR now, knowing that there might be a new headset on PS5? So yeah, the current one works, but should I make the jump now? And that's a really tough question because this is a really good bundle, but if you don't have a PS4 right now, you would need to pick up a controller. The Move controllers are also a really tough sell because it's almost a given that PSVR and PS5 will not use 2009 Move controllers, right? In fact, we're pretty much expecting that it won't use lighting as the tracking source. So I've always recommended virtual reality. It's a lot of fun. You just have to know what you're getting yourself into, like the possible motion sickness, PSVR being a pain to set up. But for this, it really is in a weird position because we don't have much reference points. We only have the current headset to go off of, which for that, it was announced GDC 2014, so 1 year after PS4. Then it came out the following 2 years in 2016. If that's the same formula for PS5, where we see it announced next year, but it won't come out until, say, 2023, you might not be too far off from buying it now, enjoying it now. But it very much is not an afterthought on PS5, but clearly it's supported at a minimum level because it is still a pain to set up and connect to PS5, much like it was for PlayStation 4, and now you need to use a DualShock 4, so that complicates the setup process even more. If you've got the cash, then go for it still, but I think for most people, you're probably okay to wait right now. Next up, if you remember my PS5 tips and tricks video, the one thing I mentioned in there was how to access the web browser, and at the time that was the first way we learned how to access it, but actually there's a few other ways to get in there, and the simplest way is to have somebody send you a message with a link in it, and google.com will work. You could hit that, opens up the web browser, you can start browsing freely and much more accessibly than the one I described. And what's cool is that you can actually hit options and pin this to the side of the screen so you can get picture-in-picture with any website that you want. And you can also play videos, that'll work as well. Really cool feature, although important to understand it's not really an intended feature. So this is not something that Sony was really allowing you to use. They confirmed there was no web browser support, as in there's no standard web browser application. So these are all things that we have to kind of go around in order to get to work. So at some point, I still think there's probably going to be a system update that'll remove all these possibilities, or maybe this will encourage them to just go for a full support of the web browser again, which I think would be very ideal. In this picture-in-picture, pinning to the side of the screen, not really the best way to do it. I mean, you could do true picture-in-picture where it's an overlay and not necessarily something that shrinks the size of your gameplay, which is not, like, I wouldn't really want to play games like that, and I think most people wouldn't. It's better to have it overlay. Next up, we haven't really acknowledged this just yet, but we've mentioned months ago that, hey, we can't really talk too much about these spec sheets until we see the games and see multi-platform titles running on next gen, and I even said that's when we'll see Digital Foundry run some tests, and that's where we can have some conversations. Well, those tests are here, and for a lot of these third-party games, in somewhat of a surprising fashion, we're seeing PS5 run a lot of these games better versus Series X. Depends on the circumstance, of course. For certain titles, it's based off of the performance setting that you're actually using. But for a number of third-party games, Black Ops Cold War, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Dirt 5, we're actually seeing good performance on PS5 versus Series X, where there might be certain dips in frame rate. I mean, I think our takeaway here is that PS5 is as developer-friendly as we've been hearing about for the last year. For any developers that have been vocal about how easy it is to work on PS5, they're just elated with the tools that are available. And remember, this was a foundation that Mark Cerny had for PS4 architecting that console, that we'll have frank and open conversations with developers, ask them what they want. They're going to help us shape this platform, because if we're not focused on them, then, you know, that was our big problem with PlayStation 3, and even PS2 wasn't that great to work on either. So they really built upon what they had with PS4, and that's the very foundation of the geometry engine. It's something that you basically scale up from, so it's not like this brand new work environment. You can develop as if you were working on a PS4 game, and that's where all the tools scale up from there on PlayStation 5, which I would imagine makes it much more accessible and easy to use, and certainly better to optimize for the platform as well, because that's the thing to remember here, is that it's really a lot about optimization. I know this easily goes into the versus argument, the console war business, but especially for Microsoft, because they kept touting, you know, their spec sheet and how they've got the world's most powerful console. And look, that's very much still the case. It's always a matter of optimization. It's always a matter of the vast amount of variables when it comes to game development. And this is why back then I even suggested that, yeah, we'll probably see some Series X games perform better than PS5. I mean, you can see it in the spec sheet, but there's also the inherent fact that game development has so many variables at play. Once the game's up to a final state, and once everything's in place, I mean, once you've got all that code running and you've done as much optimizing and bug squashing as you can, for one reason or another, a game just is not going to be 100% perfect. For one reason or another, game development is really difficult. And so when you've got machines that are this similar, and they are very similar, yes, Series X spec for spec has PS5 beat in most areas outside of that solid state speed. But, I mean, this is not quite the gap we saw with X1 and PS4, and that was where it was extremely noticeable on day one, where you couldn't really chalk it up to optimization or the vast variables of game development. You could see clearly that they were topping out X1 games at 900p, PS4 was able to hit games at 1080p. And even then, that wasn't a huge difference. I mean, if you were still an Xbox customer and you wanted that console, you played in that console, because preferences are okay. So same deal here. We are at a point where any differences, as fascinating as they are to watch from Digital Foundry, and I feel so bad that they've been getting so much hate from, you know, both camps there. I mean, I really feel for them. It sucks. As fascinating as it is to see that stuff, I think we're splitting hairs for most of the examples we've seen so far. I would love to see still what Sony's developers will do. I mean, that's what we're always here for, to see what a lot of Sony studios can flex out on PS5. But, I mean, that even makes a stronger case for Series X. They've got a lot of developers. There's still so much untapped talent amongst all those studios that they recently acquired. So it's always about the software. I think we're in for a really good generation. With all of that said, it's time to get to Let's Talk Plus, our weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you could win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. If you would like to win a $10 code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week, because I'm trying to pay for your games. Those are all the news stories that I want to talk about with you all. Our Tuesday video was PS Now on PS5, a service that most people probably aren't going to check out, but that's okay. I did it for you. A lot of PS3 streaming, PS4 streaming footage that you can check out in there. More PS5 topics coming. I think at this point we might be back down to one upload per week, or two technically, but one on Tuesday. We'll probably have 2 uploads sprinkled in for certain weeks for the videos that I can get done in time, but just to keep you updated, that's probably what we're looking at so far. But a lot of more PS5 topics that I want to get to, but some are going to start taking longer than others, like a formal review of the console at some point that I'll actually do. But that's it for now. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.